Hello again. We're back at it for the lab, and today's lesson is going to be on using the Secchi disk. We've got some spider eggs on there. Um, the Secchi disk is a real simple piece of equipment, kind of simple elegance, as kind of they say. Um, the whole point of a Secchi disk is to look at how far down into a water column you can see it. And you're able to sort of use that as a reference point as to the water clarity of your system. So there's a couple things to you have to know about. First of all, you have a chord that you usually mark. We have this one marked at the half meters and meters intervals. And we kind of distinguish those with either a red or a blue one. It's actually a meter and a half meter, I guess. And then so you want to have that. It's good to have this in some kind of a reel or something. When I'm done with it, I wrap it around here. You just need to keep it contained so that it doesn't get stepped on or worn out or frayed or something. The other thing is to watch the weight that is on the bottom of your Secchi disk. This particular one just has an eye bolt that goes through, and there's a nut that goes in the middle of this lead weight here. Some of them have weights that kind of dangle off of them, and the only thing you need to just be aware of is that these can become loose over time. So before you put it in the lake and your weight drops off into the water and leaves your Secchi disk floating on the top, just make sure that that's well secured, so you're not going to lose anything. Same thing with make sure you have a good knot that's attaching it. Little trick that we do on things that we want to make sure stay put is we tie a good knot in it. You can use various knots, but the very tip of the rope is then we use a cable tie to really tightly hold that into place. So it's almost impossible for that knot to come undone. Okay, so when you deploy it, there's a few things to consider. Often you're on a boat. That's usually when you're doing a Secchi disk is from a boat. You can also do it from a dock. I do it actually here off of my dock, but oftentimes it's in a boat. Ideally, you want to do Secchi disks between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon on a sunny day. That's kind of the ideal conditions. I can't say it always happens that way, but it does make a little bit of a difference. If you've got direct sun like we've got right now, you can just see down inside the water column a little bit more than you can on an overcast day. And the same thing with the reason they want it from 10 to 2 is because the sun angle at those times is higher in the sky, so hitting more directly down in and penetrating into the water, so that you're more likely to be able to see the Secchi disk. Second, you want to make sure to not wear sunglasses. These are photo gray, so they're the ones that just kind of turn by themselves automatically. So I try to take these off when I'm using or taking a Secchi depth reading. All you're trying to see is this black and white. It's not like you're trying to read something or see anything real detailed. So even if you can't see real well with your glasses off, you can still take your glasses off and get a good reading from a Secchi depth. And then finally, you want to make sure that you are looking on when you're in a boat, you want to make sure you're on the shadow side of the boat. So right now the sun is over here to my right, so I would want to take the Secchi reading from the other side, or the left side of the boat. The reason is that reflection that's on the water over here really makes it hard to see. All you're seeing is the reflection, and of course you got some water movement, and that's not conducive to trying to see what's going on. If you don't have a lot of shadow, and sometimes, like if you're really midday, sometimes the sun's really overhead, you don't have much of a boat shadow to be in. You can use your own body to sort of, lean out just a little bit over. If you have a hat on, especially, it's kind of nice. You can kind of get it moved out. All you need is a little area that you can see through. So even if you can't, even if the whole side of the boat doesn't have a shadow, if you can just make enough of a shadow for you to kind of look down into, then that works. Some people use a viewing tube, and if you do use a viewing tube or an observation tube, which is basically just it's like a tube, like a PVC pipe that has a piece of glass on the end usually, and you just you're looking down, and that gets rid of all the reflection from the top of the water. Makes it much easier to see down into the water. But since most people don't do that, I don't really recommend doing that, because most people don't use that. So if you're trying to compare Secchi depths from one place to another, you probably want to all be kind of doing it the same way. So the way this is deployed is, so once again, we're kind of middle of the day. Hopefully the surface isn't too rough. If you've got a lot of wind waves, that can actually kind of mess your readings up. Same reason again. You're trying to get rid of all those reflections, and of course if your water is really violently shaking back and forth or splashing up against the boat, it's pretty hard to get a good reading. So hopefully it's at least not hugely, wind isn't hugely blowing at the moment. So you lower this over the shadow side of the boat, and you just kind of let it drop. And just let it drop and let it drop, and constantly keep your eye on it, and you'll see as it goes down further and further, it's kind of harder and harder to see. And you're really just kind of looking for this black-white separation. You can really see that underneath the water as a distinctive kind of feature that you can kind of keep your eye on. So you keep lowering it, and at some point you'll lose sight of it. And at that instant, you stop the rope, and then you bring it back up until you can see it, and then you lower it till you can't, and you kind of raise it up, and you kind of just go up and down a couple of times until you get to the point where you feel like you can just barely see it. Just before it disappears. If you let it down another inch or two, it's going to be out of sight. So that's, that point where you can just still barely see it is the depth that you want. So at that point, you're way up here on the surface, so you'll just grab your rope at whatever place that it is, right there on the surface of the water, and you just lift the whole thing up, keeping your hand on that spot on the rope. You then will lay it out on the deck of your boat, and if I counted right there, there's a ½ meter, the black is 1 meter, and I'm right at the red spot here, so this would be a 1.5 meter Secchi depth. And it's usually recorded in feet. You can also do it in meters. This is meters here, so it kind of depends upon whatever our particular watershed. We always did it in feet, but either standard is fine. You can always convert if you have to. That's it. When you're done, you just wind up your cord. It's a really good idea to let it dry out a little bit before you make that reading. Be sure to write down the data. As with all the things that we talk about, always write your data down immediately. When you're doing this over and over again, you'd be surprised how often it is that you'll confuse something in your head over the previous reading, or you just you almost start going through the motions and just will forget to write the data down, and that's of course an issue. So just be sure to write the recording, the data measurement down, and that's all there is to Secchi depth. As far as analyzing it, it's kind of a rough measurement. You can use it to determine kind of the water quality of your lake. A lot of times they'll just use Secchi depths as a quick measurement to determine if your lake is oligotrophic or what trophic level it belongs in. And that can refer to how much productivity is in your lake. If it's oligotrophic, it means it's very productive, and you probably have some issues with your too much nutrients, and you're getting algae blooms and stuff, and you'll have a low Secchi depth due to that. If you can lower it a long ways, like Crater Lake, I can't remember, it's like 300 feet or something, Secchi Disk. And of course, if you've got a lake like Crater Lake where you can go down that far, then of course you have to have a bigger disc. You know, some of their Secchi discs are like 3 feet across, just to be able to see the thing that far down. That's it. The next one we'll be back to talk about. I guess I don't know for sure how you're viewing these, but we still have some other items to cover, so we'll see you next time. Bye.